We have Muhammed in Alexandria. How are you?
Hello?
Hello.
Hello.
Hi, am I on the air?
You are.
From the other end of the world. How are you?
Hi, fine, thanks. How are you?
Fine.
I just wanted to say that I've been watching your show for a long time on YouTube, and I absolutely love it. I just can't believe that something like this is real. Like, we need something like this in the Middle East.
Believe it.
I mean, oh my God, how badly do we need something like this here?
Well, I've been to Alexandria, but I'm not going to come back over there and set up the show there. You can set up a show there.
Unfortunately, not a few hundred. Can that actually be at all possible? Yeah. Anyway, sorry, what I really wanted to talk about was how to try to convince people that atheism is not a bad thing, especially here in Islam, where we hear mosque prayers 5 times a day through gigantic megaphones. And I live in Alexandria, which is actually the birthplace of Christianity. We have such sharp divides here between Muslims and Christians, and one group sometimes attacks the other really brutally. Most of the time it's Muslims against Christians. But how do I introduce my friends to this kind of secular thinking without them completely thinking that I'm evil?
Okay. I would say that first what you would have to do is ascertain, you'd have to look at the individual you're talking to and ascertain to what degree they are invested in some of the emotional aspects of their religious indoctrination, which essentially teach them. People with these kinds of belief systems are conditioned right off the bat to believe that anyone who does not hold their beliefs, does not share their beliefs, has a different outlook, rejects we heard it from our earlier caller from London. You know, if you don't believe what I believe, you are evil. And so you have to sort of get down to the degree to which the person you're talking to thinks that way. Oh, if you don't believe what I believe, you're evil. Because that right there is an emotional investment. They're looking at you and they're seeing, Exorcist, right? And you have to sort of get them out of that mindset and just say, no, look, I'm a person, I think differently from you, and can we actually talk about ideas here without you constantly seeing, a demon when you look at me, or some sort of devil-influenced, villain. So that is kind of what you have to get around, that there is the whole emotional and sort of gut instinct aspect of religious indoctrination that supersedes and clouds the reasoning faculty. And so this is why you have these horrible religious differences. This is why you have Christians and Muslims and Jews just, going at it like this, because they don't see the other groups as human beings. They see them as, devils and apostates and sinners and people deserving of retribution, and not as other human beings. And so that's what you got to get around first.
Well, in the case of Islam, I don't know how familiar you are with our principles, but Muslims see Jews and Christians as previous receivers of the revelation of that same God that came down to us. So basically what Islam is doing is it's saying, oh yeah, all your prophets, the Jew prophets, are all part of our faith. Muhammad was preaching the same message we did. So Islam has this brilliant cover-up to allow itself to monopolize the monotheistic faith, and the Prophet Muhammad is very famous for saying, I am the last prophet. And so, I don't know what to tell people. I want to know if I can become an atheist, why can't other people? For me, it was just a matter of reading and thinking about it. It was just thinking about it, why on earth would God choose Arabic of all possible human languages? And why would God choose that time and that place? Do people not think about these things? That the same God that created the galaxy, the Andromeda galaxy, the color purple, and all this, he speaks in rhymes. He speaks Arabic. He has good Arabic spelling. I just don't get it. I don't know how somebody could eat up the possibility that God wrote a book.
And evidently, before that, he was inspiring in Aramaic, and then before that in Hebrew. I think if you spend a lot of time focusing on how you manage to escape, you can find some clues, at least, to what sort of arguments you might want to make. But this idea that Islam is somehow protected because it manages to fold in these previous two Abrahamic traditions is just kind of nonsense. It's kind of surface theology, in much the same way that you could say Christianity is Judaism 2.0. It is and it isn't, and there's a reason why Jews don't accept that Jesus was God, that he wasn't the Messiah, that he didn't fulfill prophecy. And when people in theological circles actually start talking about this, now you can get somewhere. But meanwhile, you've got Christians charging on ahead saying, oh, no, he fulfilled every single prophecy, every prophecy's come true, this is all good, he's definitely God. The Jews just somehow haven't managed to see it, God love them, and they got their own deal with God, and we'll work that out later. And then the Muslims say, oh, yes, and it was all right, and Jesus was a prophet. It's clear in the New Testament tradition that Jesus wasn't a prophet. He's not portrayed as a prophet. He's portrayed as divine.
As the Son.
As divine, as being God. Now, if Islam comes out and says that Jesus was a prophet, that's the only way that is being accommodating is at like the kindergarten level of theology. It's actually an affront. It should be an affront to Christians who think that Jesus is divine for Muslims to be saying, oh, he's just a prophet. And it should be an affront to Muslims who think he was a prophet for Christians to be saying that Jesus is divine. And I think that's in some areas that's a significant point of contention. And yet somehow or another we have people who have managed to adopt either religion out of the other because they think they're somehow connected. It's because people don't seem to know very much about what it is that they believe or why, what it is these religions say.
No, a lot of people have no clue, have zero clue about what their people say. A lot of Muslims have never read the Qur'an from beginning to end, and even the ones that do, they don't understand it. This kind of Arabic is really old. I mean, the Arabic we speak today, every day, is modern, standardized Arabic and dialects and colloquialisms and all that. The language of the Qur'an is ancient, absolutely ancient.
And modern students in English classes aren't going to understand Shakespeare without guidance. Mm-hmm. I mean, that we're talking about just how much English has changed in a handful of years.
Just the idioms and everything. Yeah. It's completely different. And to answer your question about why do people think that they always think that God would speak in their language and have their language? You have to remember when you think of it in terms of that to each believer, what God really is an idealized projection of the believer's self-image that they have projected onto the universe as a whole. Then it's easier to understand why they think that way. So that's another thing that you have to kind of get around. You're dealing with arguments or beliefs in which the believer is personally, emotionally invested much more than intellectually invested. Because, as you point out, if this were a purely intellectual exercise, they would strive to read things, study, understand, what have you. And while some believers do that, even the ones who do that, still have that degree of emotional investment. God ultimately ends up being a guy who always agrees with you. He always agrees with your politics. He agrees with your views on sex and marriage and what food you should eat and not. And exactly, that's the amazing thing about God. He just always agrees with you. He's your best pal. That's that whole idealized self-image projection thing. So there's the emotional connection you've got to work around.
What were the key elements of your transition out of Islam?
Is this Matthew?
Yeah.
I just want to say you're like a celebrity to me, so...
Thanks.
Sorry, what was your question?
I wanted to know what were like the key elements, the points that made you think the most that helped lead you out of Islam?
Well, I was never really as firm as a believer as they get. I mean, my parents are pretty upper middle class, and they speak French and Arabic and stuff. I just started learning English a while ago, and when I read the Quran in English, I was like, this makes a lot less sense in English than it ever did in Arabic. So I was just thinking about why, if God really did exist, and he really did want to reveal himself to human beings, why wouldn't he just reveal himself to every single human being on the planet in all languages, say the exact same thing simultaneously to everybody, and tell them to stop fighting each other forever? Is that too much is that ridiculous to imagine? Is that ridiculous to expect that from God?
I think it's a little more effective than a burning bush or a pillar of fire or plagues, and then taking a band of rabble-rousers and giving them the truth to disseminate to everybody else. I mean, I find it absolutely absurd. hey, I've said it before, the God starts off and I got a man, and oh, well, that wasn't enough. Let's make him, a partner. So now I got a man and a woman, everything's going to be fine. And then that goes bad. And so all right, kick you guys out of the garden. No more, get to play nice with everybody else. And then it builds up and it goes horribly, horribly wrong again. So now I'm going to flood the whole earth and just keep this one family alive. Instead of focusing on everybody, it's one family. And surely this one good family will correct things. And then a few hundred years later, they're building a tower. And no, that's not what you can't build a tower to heaven. I didn't want you to do that. So let's confuse them all. And now instead of worrying about everybody on the planet, I'm just going to stick with this one little tribe where everything.
Maybe I'll get it right this time.
Where everything's going to repeatedly go wrong again. I mean, it's this comedy of errors where what kind of inept buffoon are we talking about? And in every case, they all think that we've got the truth and it's our job to disseminate it to everybody else. And interestingly, they're all doing this in competition, and some of them fall by the wayside. Some of them are killed because our God said to kill you and take your stuff, which is about what 80% of the Old Testament's about, or the Tanakh.
Yeah, well, actually, thanks to you guys and watching your show, I did read the Old Testament for the first time. It's not a big thing here in Egypt, but I went out, I got a copy in Arabic, and I read it, and I was like, what's so different about the Qur'an from all these, not nice things that the Old Testament has to say? And then when I showed it to my friend, they're like, well, yeah, the Old Testament was revealed by God, but it was corrupted and became the New Testament, and nobody could make up their minds. And then they go on to say how the Qur'an has been unchanged for 1,400 years. Well, it shows.
Yeah.
I mean, it was written by 7th century men for 7th century men. How it's so obvious. I don't know, like, it's enough to make yourself suspect that maybe you don't know something that they don't. Do they know something I don't? Because it just smells of a rat to me that this book is at all relevant now. I mean, you've obviously heard the violent passages in the Quran about, you shall slay them wherever you find them and such.
Right.
And then Muslim apologists will say, well, you're taking it out of context.
Yeah, because there's two of those passages that are almost the same. So whenever you say it, they'll say that this one's actually talking about a time of war, and one of the passages is and one isn't. I'm curious about a couple of things. You talked about how the Quran, once you read it in English, made less sense in English than Arabic. But I've heard Muslims actually use that to say that, yes, you need to read it in the original Arabic because it doesn't make sense in English.
Exactly. That's the thing, too. That exposes the weakness of what should be an all-powerful, all-knowing being. An all-powerful, all-knowing being
he would make
reveal a book in such a difficult language.
His message would be comprehensible no matter what. Yeah.
Not really. I mean, of all the Arab Muslim countries, Egypt is actually, the most secular and most liberal-minded. If this was Saudi Arabia, I wouldn't even be allowed to make this call. No way. If the Saudi Arabia, they have something retarded called the prayer police. They go around, make sure that all shops are closed during prayer. If there's a shop that's open, you're taken downtown, and there's a big fat fine you have to pay. They also have something ridiculous called the Ministry of Virtue and Vice. It's about making sure that we can't see a woman's fingernails and all that such. That no, but in Egypt, no, it's okay. I don't. Nobody's forcing me to pray. There's relative freedom from religion here as far as that is concerned. But things like Ramadan, I don't know if you know about that, but we just came out of it about 2 months ago. You fast during all daylight hours, complete abstinence from all like material, worldly pleasures, mainly eating and drinking. And it's hot here in Egypt. It's really, really hot. Even right now, it's 30 degrees and it's the middle of the night. And you can't drink. Like, I want to drink water. I'm not going to just limit myself to drinking water at home. So yes, when I do drink water, people do come up to me and say, what do you think you're doing? Or you're not respecting the culture, the faith, cultural insensitivity and all that.
So this is you bring up something really compelling, which is that what religion does is it comes up with these concepts of virtue and morality and what have you that really have nothing to do with human well-being or happiness. They just have to do with enforcing this system of rules designed to control people.
It's really crude. I don't get it. It has nothing to do with the human experience. It's like something out of the Victorian era. Seriously.
beyond.
But anyway, we're running short on time, and I appreciate the call.
Yeah, thank you.
And
Okay, yeah, thanks very much for taking my call.
Sure,
Stay in
call
touch
back
with us
anytime.
through,
Let us know what's going on.
through email and what have you, if you like.
All right, bye.
All right.